You are listening to the Wyn Thomas File.
And time for another guest on the Wyn Thomas File. This is Mark Rees. We did talk to him about his book, Quirky Cardiff. Now he's back with Quirky Swansea. Nice to have your company today again.
Thank you, Wyn. It's wonderful to be back. Wonderful to be back to talk about another quirky book.
So what did you say were the lesser-known parts of Swansea?
Lesser-known parts, as in, just bits of history, bits of streets, bits of anything?
Yeah, anything. Past people don't know that you know.
One that always really fascinated me, and this is in the book as well, is because I spent a lot of time working for the Evening Post, who, of course, were based in the what I think is called the Post building now, next door to Morgan's Hotel, down the marina. And directly outside of the Evening Post building is a sculpture, which most people drive past and they see this big blue lump of metal just kind of plonked outside the museum. So if you're outside the museum, you can see it outside the Post. And it's only when you actually stop and look at the thing and work out what is this supposed to be, that you realise it's the world's, or possibly the world's, smallest theatre stage. Because when you look at it, it's made of 3 bits. You've got the frame, which is the bit people see when people are driving down is it Oystermouth Road, or that main bit in the seafront. When people drive past, they see this frame, this metal bit. On the ground, then there's a little catwalk bit, so you can walk up to it, stand in that framed bit, do your little Shakespearean quotes, and the council put a bench on the other side of it, so your audience can sit on the bench. So it's the world's smallest theatre stage. So maybe after a night on Wine Street, you can keep going a little bit further, pop onto that stage, and to do your monologues. Okay,
research into this, is that a lot of research you've done onto this book?
A lot on this book, you say? Sorry, I went on. Well, what's quite nice with Swansea is because I've spent so much time, like I said, sort of working the beat as a journalist. It's a combination of research combined with my own memories, my own experiences. So a nice example is the Mumbles Mile has to go in there. So, of course, I remember the Mumbles Mile as a teenager when I was maybe drinking a little too much and experiencing it the hard way. And then more recently, I went back there as a journalist to see what was left of it and to speak to the pubs that remained. And now, these years later, I'm going back to it as a much, much older man, to look at it from a different perspective again. So it's really nice. It's combining research, but it's combining those sort of layers of my own history as well that have gone into so many of these places. And the Mumbles Mile is a great example of that.
Okay. So I've chosen some of the lesser ones here for you to talk about. I know you love supernatural and strange, so we start with Dr. Death, Ray Matthews.
Dr. Death Ray, is a wonderful, wonderful figure who by all accounts invented the death ray. I mean, there's a bit more to it than that, whether you believe it or not. He certainly left some important people, if not convinced, they didn't rule it out. Let's put it that way then. And the idea was, I'm summarising and paraphrasing a little here for this interview, but you could use this in theory to shoot planes out of the sky with a beam from the ground, which would be very useful during world wars and things. But his experiments, obviously, you don't want someone called Dr. Death Ray living next door to you with his experiments. So he needed somewhere out in the sticks, out in the wilds. So where do you go? You go you head towards sort of the Swansea Mountains, or the Swansea Valley / Swansea Mountains. But yes, we set up his own little laboratory up there, well away from everyone. There's a lovely little piece of folklore where apparently Winston Churchill was interested in Dr. Death Ray's ideas and came to Swansea and met him in the local pub for a pint and a chat. Again, I haven't found any evidence for or against that, but I mean, I just love folklore anyway. I just think it's a wonderful story that Churchill came to Swansea to talk about death rays or whatever else he was thinking of. But yes, Dr. Death Ray, fascinating character, and yes,
yeah. I mean, this thing kind of reminds me of the sign for Batman that he used to put up in the TV programs. So that's what it does. There's also a thing I've looked into him. I looked at he also claimed that he discovered radio before Marconi did. Have you heard of that one?
He had lots of big claims. I mean, I tried to focus on his work in Swansea, Yeah, I wouldn't put it past him if that's what he was thinking about. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go quickly on to the next one. This is one I hadn't seen before. This is the bunkhouse.
The bunkhouse. I love the bunkhouse. I included this in this book because I'm kicking myself. As you know, I do a lot on the spooky side of things. I do a lot of things with, I write books about Welsh ghost stories and things. And I published a book a few years ago. I probably spoke to you about it when called Paranormal Swansea.
Yeah.
Or Paranormal Swansea and Gower, sorry, to give it its full name. And after I'd finished writing it, but before it was published, we were invited to the bunkhouse to do a ghost investigation. And I was really annoyed that it was too late for me to include in that book, but I really wanted to include it in some books, so it's made it into this book instead. But Jordan, the landlord there, is a wonderful. He's running a really fantastic live music venue there. The ghost stories, and you can take these with a pinch of salt. I think they make visiting somewhere a bit more interesting. But there were, again, to summarise, reports of strange things happening downstairs in the cellar. Members of staff refusing to go down there and do things. And in one particular instance that kind of sparked off this investigation, they had somebody in the pub, unconnected with anyone. And she said, excuse me, I'm psychic, so they claimed. I can sense something downstairs in the cellar, which tallied up nicely with what other people were saying. So I got together with some local ghost hunters, and they conducted an an investigation there, conducted a few experiments at the same time. And the conclusion of that was that, a bit like with Dr. Deathray, the conclusion was that they couldn't rule out anything paranormal there, but at the same time, there was no smoking gun either. But I make the same old joke all the time, but the bunkhouse is a wonderful place for spirits of all varieties, whether you just want to pop in for a quick pint or whether you're there looking for ghosts. It's a wonderful venue.
But where is the bunkhouse?
Where is the bunkhouse?
Yeah.
Oh, there's an entrance on the Kingsway, which I think is permanently shut now. Or you can sort of come round the other side then, opposite the, for want of a better description, the adult shop that is around on the other side. Directly opposite that is the other entrance into it.
Right.
And it's it's a pub that's got so much history as well. You talk about things like the Swansea Blitz and things. It's a building that's seen it all.
Okay, let's go to Sir Karl Jenkins, something a bit different for you. A pen cloth boy and a well-known composer, isn't he? Absolutely fantastic record. Just been voted Classic FM's top living composer.
And I could not be happier. Yes, I've. I think I might have explained this to you before, but what my approach with these quirky books is, what I want to do is there's no point saying Karl Jenkins is from Gower. I mean, everyone knows that, it's a famous fact. But at the same time, if you can find something interesting about them to include, that makes it quirky. It's a bit like Catherine Zeta. Everyone knows Catherine Zeta-Jones is from Swansea. But if you can find out a quirky bit of history about it, that's a reason to include it too. Karl Jenkins, I hold my hands up and confess to being almost embarrassingly that much of a fan. I've had photos with him. I've been around his house to interview him, and I've spent a lot of time. He's probably sick of hearing my voice. Actually, I've spent so much time tracking down Karl Jenkins in my journalist days. The angle I went for inclusion with this book, because I thought he was such a good sport with this as well, is you might have picked up on this during the Prince Charles's all the fanfare around Prince Charles becoming King Charles recently. One of the invited guests there was Sir Karl, and Sir Karl's music was part of the proceedings, as was Bryn Terfel singing. That was the Welsh bit. But there was a rumour that Karl Jenkins was actually Meghan Markle in disguise. And the reason for this is, for people who weren't familiar with him, he's got that very, very distinctive tash, which, well, I mean, it's very distinctive, isn't it? It's very him. And so people saw this and they thought, that can't be real. That must be somebody in disguise with a big fake moustache. And started this internet rumour that it was Meghan Markle. And I just love the fact that Karl did, Sir Karl, so I'm not overly friendly, but Sir Karl did actually make a statement to say, just to be clear, that was me, and that wasn't Meghan Markle, who was in disguise sneaking in to see the king. But beyond that, I'm very, very happy that Classic FM award, because the first living composer ever, that is a huge achievement, and The Armed Man is a wonderful, wonderful piece of music.
Yeah. And we'll move on to another guy who's no longer with us, but an absolute legend of Swansea. That was Dylan Thomas, and the Cumdonkin Drive and Park, and the Cadoma Calf. They're all in that book, aren't they? He's still incredibly popular, and obviously has commanded a lot of enthusiasm from people all over the world.
Yes, I'm almost recycling my own lines here, but when I was doing my paranormal book, the Paranormal Swansea book, I wrote about how Dylan Thomas haunts Swansea in more ways than one. I mean, there are people out there who claim to have seen his ghost and things, but in a more sort of spiritual sense, you can't walk around Swansea without sort of feeling Dylan's spirit there, whether you're looking at quotes on the walls, you're looking at bits of graffiti, you're looking at statues, you're looking, well, I was going to say, looking at that big leaf that was in the middle of town, but that's been ripped up at the moment, hasn't it? So, but all these bits all around it. You mentioned the Cardoma, which is, and it's another place I've, having spent so much time in Swansea, you know, I can't claim to be a Swansea boy. I'm a Port Talbot boy, but Swansea's my city. The Cardoma is another place I'm really, really sort of passionate about. And I zoomed in on the piece of artwork around the outside of it, which is, you might have seen this, and on the spot, it's a difficult, I'm going to paraphrase, I can't remember the exact wording, but it's a listing of things like Picasso and girls and all these subjects that Dylan Thomas and you know, the so-called Cardoma gang, people like Vernon Watkins, when they'd sit in the old Cardoma, because of course the original Cardoma was bombed, but they'd sit there, they'd drink coffee, they'd smoke cigarettes, and they'd talk about things like Picasso and Dracula and girls and whatever was on their mind at the moment. And I just love that little nod to it, that now it's outside in a neon work of art that was put there in 2014 as part of the Dylan celebrations, which they feel like a lifetime ago now, don't they, Wyn? But not that long, not 12 years ago, 13 years ago?
Yeah,
12.
Yeah, it is indeed. I remember all the badges and the pens and all that stuff. Yeah. It does go on absolutely quickly. That does indeed, yeah.
Yeah,
indeed. There we are. Well, there's lots of things to get through in this book. I mean, it's incredible. If you're a Swansea person, it's time to catch up with Quirky Swansea, because it tells you lots of things plus you didn't know about Swansea and places you might want to go and visit. So, Mark, thanks again for being my guest on Wyn Thomas File, and I'll probably see you sometime in the future.
Thank you, Wyn. Really appreciate it. I'm sure I'll pop up like a bad penny when my next book is out.
Okay, thank you.